Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Lowdown on Low Code. I'm Rob Koplowitz. I'm one of your hosts today, and I'm here with my co-host, Dave Marcus. How are you, Dave?
I am really good, Rob. Coming to you from sunny, well, today not quite as sunny, South Africa, where I'll be for the next few months, instead of rainy and gray Seattle. And so looking forward to that. And today we actually have someone that we've been trying to get onto this series for quite some time. Sean is from Retool. I'm going to have him talk a little about Retool because some of our audience may not necessarily know Retool particularly well. But certainly, we've been looking to get Sean onto this podcast series for quite some time, and looking forward to being able to chat today.
Yeah, so excited to have you today, Sean. So Sean Allen of Retool. Um, can't wait to get your backstory, Sean. So we know you from a lot of different places. You are a serial low code executive. That's but tell us how you got here. Tell us about your background, Sean. How did you end up in tech? How did you end up being drawn to low code?
Yeah, I first of all thrilled to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I have been um, in the app dev space and specifically low code for quite some time. It's it started with a love for the general space. I have a computer science undergrad. Don't worry, I'm not going to go all the way back through that. But graduated and did some development work, et cetera, et cetera. And I saw at the time just how painful it was and how poorly it was being done. And I went through actually a long selling career before I jumped over into marketing. And my first jump over into marketing was where we met at OutSystems, and I. I joined that company because at the time it was actually a very interesting and unique approach to solving a massive problem that I had seen by working at companies over the years, and taking an interesting and a unique approach to it. So we worked together. We met along with John at that time, as you guys were creating the low code space to begin with, right? Humble beginnings there, and I have been a glutton for the punishment of this space ever since. And, I think, back then it was, is this actually a valid way of solving the problem? I remember when we first started talking, it was all of this was lumped into a cloud platforms piece of research. So, at the in the same document as AWS, Azure, and GCP sat OutSystems and Mendix and other folks like that, which made it really hard to differentiate in the market. But the reason that I come back, and I've been to a couple of places in between, but what brought me back to Retool is a couple of things. One is more than a decade in, this problem still exists significantly. It is a problem that impacts every organization in an incredibly outsized way. And I'm so glad that I came back at this time because it coincides with the most incredible technology shift I have, and probably all of us have experienced in our entire careers. Right? There's never been a more fascinating time to be alive and in tech and in the app dev and app gen spaces.
So super interesting to hear how Retool is approaching this because it is a little different than most of the guests we've had to date. Dave?
Yeah, so let's talk a bit more about that, Sean. Retool, I've known for quite some time. I have a couple of ex-colleagues that, have been at Retool for a while. And certainly, you guys more recently have appeared in Gartner's low code application platform Magic Quadrant, where other vendors like Amendex, Microsoft OutSystems, and so on tend to appear, in a way that is fairly well defined because it's been, each one of them been around for a long time, as you mentioned earlier. Yet the way that you leverage, embrace, and add value in this sort of low code world is quite a lot different from those vendors. And so it'd be great just to kind of hear your perspective on sort of what the problem space is that you guys are trying to actually tackle and sort of where you are today.
Yeah, happy to. And it's part of what drew me to Retool to begin with. So we started back in 2017, well before I joined, but focusing on professional developers, because that's where the solution to this problem starts. And by focusing on the professional developer, the problem that they have and the approach that they want to take to solving that problem, it was pretty unique. And it's what drove us to a lot of our early product market fit, and finding a large number of customers out there that resonated with it. Because what I found very difficult in my prior stints in the low code space was that professional developers didn't really want to use low code. They didn't want to code with crayons, right? It was not only insulting to their craft, but the safety scissors approach, it created these artificial ceilings, and they weren't always obvious. But as a professional developer jumping into it, they'd be like, okay, I don't know where the walls are and I don't know where the ceiling is. I just know they're there. And I know at some point, as I get far down this process, I'm going to hit one of those things and I'm going to be angry that I've invested all of this time into either this app or this portfolio of apps, and not to be able to expand from there. So Retool started with the professional developer because the larger problems of enterprise app dev can't be solved without that. Now, when you can responsibly add the impact of generative AI on top of a high ceiling trusted platform like what Retool has created, where a professional developer can come in and until recently use Visual Canvas and code very fluidly inside of the same IDE. They're not escape hatches, right? They're contemplated to be a part of the overall flow. Right, you get a place when you add the generative AI approaches inside of there, you get this place where pro devs and domain experts, also called citizen developers, basically people who understand the problem that needs to be solved, but don't necessarily have the technical background to go solve it. Right, so you get this place where both of those can collaborate and accelerate. And we believe this is creating a new category called enterprise app gen platforms. And we feel like Retool is first in line for that.
Cool. Rob, over to you.
All right. So, all right, Sean, let's I want to get a definition from you. So the two most abused terms, I think, in the industry right now, or at least from my little corner of the world, are orchestration and vibe coding, right? Let's talk about vibe coding.
All right.
So, is vibe coding low code? Is vibe coding relevant to low code? Is vibe coding only for professional developers? Give us a definition of what you and Retool used, how you and Retool use the term vibe coding, and then give our audience an idea of where and how this is going to be potentially powerful for them.
Yeah, you bet. It's I started laughing when you asked about a definition, because there are so many definitions that are overloaded in our space, and right now in this market, none more so than vibe coding. So I and we tend to lean into the definition of the inventor of the term, Andrei Karpathy. Right? When he was throwing it out there, frankly, he was vibing on X, right? And came up with that and said, "This is what I think it is." It's like when you jump into the environment and you just let natural language flow, and you don't YOLO it, right? You just gotta go for it and just let it take you where it's gonna go. From there, the term has basically been conflated to anytime you use natural language in the assistance of creating code or an application is considered vibe coding. And I think that really creates some harmful confusion, along with some inflated expectations, right? But if we step back and we frame vibe coding as that larger piece of generative AI being applied to application development, the way that we look at it is it's a thing. It's a technology. It is not the result. It is a piece of technology that you use to get to a series of outcomes. But it dramatically opens the aperture for who can build. It also modifies what you can build, right? So you're not just building deterministic applications, workflows anymore, but you're also building agentic workflows and agents, right? Where you introduce the automation of reason, right? So not only is the aperture wider for who can build, but it's also changing what you can build. However, without the proper guardrails that understand enterprise constraints, it's absolute chaos, right? Because now that aperture is so wide open, everybody is out of like, wait, well, I can go do this. I'm a domain expert. I've got that problem right there. I'm going to spin up this online tool. I'm going to type a couple of words in there. Look, I've got a solution to my problem, right? There's a buzzsaw coming as that meets those enterprise requirements. And so we look at it as there's kind of two sides of this market, right? One is the code gen and app gen vendors that are focused on the individual developer, right? Whether that be the domain expert or a professional developer that's looking for code generation assistance, right? The problem with domain experts using those code gen and app gen tools is that since they're generating directly into code or entirely obfuscating what they're generating into, the domain experts can't understand what has been created, and therefore they can't trust it and the organization can't trust it. And on the other side of that, you've got these massive black box platforms that create the safe environment, but they put in a low ceiling. Right. I have an awesome leader in our product marketing team, Kirsten. She has a way of coming up with some analogies, and she came up with one here, which is it's like those toy steering wheels that you see on the back of car seats, where it gives the illusion that the person holding the wheel is actually driving. Right. That's what those environments kind of feel like, and we see ourselves as this beautiful middle ground, right, where we are refactoring all of our building blocks to be AI native. Why do we need to do that? Because when we created them, we did not anticipate that an LLM would be generating using them, right? You have to rework the generation or what you're generating into so that you lower hallucinations, so that you get more predictable results, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we're also generating to a higher level of abstraction that is not only grokkable by whomever is doing the generation, but it's also trustable, and very fluidly what we call mixed mode, which means that no matter what kind of builder I am jumping into Retool, I can flow however I want to between natural language, visual canvas, code, whatever development mode makes the most sense for what it is that I'm trying to do and what fits my environment. So it creates this environment where pro devs can create the guardrails, domain experts can fly, and all of it's done on the enterprise's data in their cloud and secure by default.
Sean, you've hit on a couple of points here a couple of times. We're going to visit one a little later. One is this idea that, the goodness of low-code platforms, the models, the domain-specific languages are also constraining, right? They also create constraints, and I think we've all run into those constraints. And the second one you've hit on, and I think really hit on really effectively here, is it feels very much like the AI in general walls that we're hitting right now. If you look at the MIT study, 95% fail. Well, why are they failing? Well, they're failing because they're being shut down by GRC, by governance, risk, and compliance. They're being shut down by HR. They're being shut down by legal. Thankfully, right? Before they go out and cause damage, but they will cause damage. We will see these things popping up onto the front page of the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times and other places you don't want to be under those circumstances.
Right.
But again, we've all been around this for a long time. We've seen these new technologies, people becoming over enthusiastic with them, causing problems. Problems get solved, but the black eyes, as we're figuring out what we don't know, can be painful, right? So we're kind of hoping that, between the podcast and between guests like yourself and between some of the governance research and things we're putting out, that maybe we can skip that middle step this time. So On that topic, folks, if you want to know more about what analysis.tech is up to, visit us at analysis.tech. We've got some actually really, really interesting research out there on the topics of governance. We've got interesting research on the topics of these next generation platforms, which Sean has referred to a number of times, Retool being one of them. If you want to interact more with myself, with Dave Marcus, with John Reimer, with Andy Bartels, a former chief economist at Forrester, with Francis Cardin, the godfather of RPA, with Rick Greenwald, used to be one of the main data folks at Gartner. Find us at analysis.tech. We'd love to interact with you more, and please download the research. It's free with a sign up. Okay, back to you, Dave.
Cool. So, Sean, as Rob mentioned, there are these sort of two things that are very visible right now. I think as a result, it's a little deja vu for me in some ways. I was at Microsoft when Access 1.0 was released. Makes me feel a little old, but that's the reality. And one of the things that came out of this was this idea of being able to say that to someone who isn't now a traditional pro developer, I can build stuff and I can do it in a way that doesn't require me to understand the nuances of complex data models and complex business functions and user interface development that I never really understood, but I can just put all that together. Now, obviously, in today's world, with these conversational interfaces with large language models and so on, it's a different set of technologies that are enabling this stuff. But at the same point in time, to your point, it has the opportunity of being able to create an enormous amount of chaos. And so I guess, what in your opinion is in fact the best way for a range of users, from the professional developer and coder all the way through to the sort of domain expert, to really use these technologies to best effect, rather than to be utilizing them to create what I'm going to call silos of unmanaged applications at a scale that we've never seen before, and ultimately create even more chaos than we've ever seen before?
Yeah, for us, the answer is giving a common surface for both of those constituent groups to operate on and work inside of. Right, the upside of this, like if you look across the market, which is so chaotic and noisy right now, the barriers to building have almost been completely removed. But the barriers to shipping, they haven't moved, or they better not move. So what we believe you need, is a common platform where you can have professional developers that graduate into kind of a platform engineer or an architect, right? They're creating those trusted building blocks. How am I supposed to access my Salesforce data, my Databricks data, my Snowflake data? How am I supposed to interact with my HR systems? What are the proper, trusted, and GRC'd ways of doing a number of these different, not just data access, but just how I operate, how my SSO works, how my RBAC works, all of that. You need a common platform that captures that, and you need a group of folks that go onto that and configure it and extend it to work specifically inside of their enterprise. Right, but that environment that is created there then creates this trusted substrate upon which the domain experts can go and do all of the things that they're doing right now anyway. And then running into like one of the things they run into is that a lot of the current down market approaches, or the approaches that are aimed at the individuals, they may have their own platform, but they're not connected to the enterprise. Right? They're not connected to the data that actually makes that enterprise go around. Right? So I think that the answer to this is to have an environment where pro devs, where again, we still believe that's where the solution to this problem begins, come in and bring all of their expertise to do the platform engineering work and also to do the high ceiling stuff that the domain experts aren't going to do, but also give an environment, same environment, for those domain experts to go and excel and accelerate.
Yeah, sure. So, in 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 line with everything we've discussed, how does the role of the software developer, and here I'm talking about the professional software developer, the
Mm-hmm.
tester, and a product manager who's
Yep.
defining specs and so on, really change?
Yeah. So so a couple of different categories in there. We think the professional developer, um, they're still going to want to create, but they're also going to be leveraged to be this platform engineer to create this trusted surface, et cetera, et cetera. That's why we continue to offer a way for really high ceiling creation to occur, because that's where we believe the professional developer will continue to operate. A product manager, like they begin to move, like that barrier to build that I talk about, getting lower and lower. Going from an idea that a product manager would want to guide an engineer to go and create, the way that they do that is with natural language. And if I have a platform that can accept that natural language, that can understand that natural language as an engineer might, and then go and create that, you not only get a prototyping environment, which is where a lot of this is landing right now. Like there's some really cool and effective prototypes that are being created, but actually something that can pass directly into production, because the fundamentals of those enterprise guardrails are built into the platform, right? One, a baseline that Retool creates. Two, that custom work that the professional developers go in and extend. And you've got this, amazing reusability that are available to these natural language extensions, et cetera. So like product managers begin to create on their own. Analysts begin to create on their own. And while that's not novel, right? We've had solutions, we've had platforms in the market, right? Dave, you talked about it a minute ago, right? It's been in market for a long time. While those have been there, they haven't been combined with um, uh, a high ceiling, broad landscape approach to being able to get truly interesting and expressive results out of it. So we think that there's a lot of self-service coming to the larger part of the organization, whether it be product managers, analysts, et cetera, data teams, operations teams, even internal DevOps tooling teams that need to create those. There's so much internal software out there, and like the people that are creating that are going to more and more be the people that know what needs to be created.
So, Sean, we talked a little bit about your overall sort of positioning in the context of things like a Gartner Magic Quadrant, a Forrester Wave, and others. Um, but many of the vendors in those particular waves kind of have this massive feature set that tries to be all things to all people, and tries to keep you entirely in their world for everything that needs to be done. This is not the same with Retool. Now, I'm not trying to suggest here that you don't have a comprehensive environment, but it definitely appears that you're taking a different approach there. And so it'd be interesting hearing you just talk to that in the context of, if I'm building an enterprise class application moving forward, then, what is the role of Retool? And then what are the role of things that surround Retool that you guys embrace?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, those large platforms, it's a natural outgrowth not only of time in market, but also in a world that that often rewards checking boxes, right? Our approach, the way we look at it is that the challenge is solving the right problems, and not just filling in all of those different boxes. It's actually a core reason why I like the way that Analysis Tech does the research. Right? You guys consider the problem that's being solved, and not just a general answer to, here are 100 boxes. This vendor checks 97 of them. They're the winner. We have very much looked at it that way. We grew organically in this space, as I mentioned, starting with the professional developer. When you do that, what the enterprise, what the company that we're working with is expects of us is different. They're not looking for a black box. They're looking for something that just works and assimilates into their existing organization, right? So Dave, very specifically to answer your question, our approach has led our customers to tell us that the things they would like to continue to have in their environment are things like source control, their CI/CD pipeline, their DevOps tooling, like that type of stuff, right? Because those professional developers and the infrastructure around them is built for that.
Yep.
Nothing is going to come in and fully replace all of that. So let's coexist, right? But it also means, what they have to have. Well, they have to have their own data, and in many cases, they want to have their own cloud. So what they need is an environment that can come in, look around and see, okay, I see all of your data. I see all of your infrastructure. Let's create the secure and trusted ways of getting into all of that. And if you'd like us to, we can host in your own environment, right? So come into our cloud where we have already set up all of the sometimes overbearing security rules, but that are driven by deep requirements for staying off of the front page of the New York Times, as you mentioned earlier. Being able to go in and exist in their ecosystem of data and on their cloud that has already been set up correctly, that's what not only we expect them to have, but that they expect us to be able to work with, so that what is created by using Retool is secure by default and lives inside of the guardrails and the systems that they know and love.
Brilliant. Very cool.
I love it, Sean. So, I mean, you're hitting on one of our hot buttons, which is, as Reimer and I often say in the course of the podcast, I think we've done 60. We had done 60 waves between us. Rick Greenwald did a bunch of MQs, and our true frustration is it is in fact a checkbox exercise.
Yeah.
And I would argue that if Retool finds themselves in a deal with Power Platform, OutSystems, and Pega, some of you all are in the wrong place, right? Some of you all are solving different problems. You're all solving really important problems, but you're solving them differently in different ways. And a single evaluation that stacks you up against each other just it's been a source of frustration to us on our side as well. Hey, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really have been looking forward to having Retool on. Folks, if you want to know more about Retool, how do we find you, Sean? What's the URL? How do we get more information?
Yep, absolutely. Rob and Dave, thanks for having me on the call. People can find us simply at retool.com.
Great. Look for retool.com. Follow Sean on LinkedIn. A lot of good information. Got a good insights coming out of him. Good old friend who knows an awful lot about this space. Hit the like button, hit the share button, get the word out about Lowdown on Low Code. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode.
Thanks, Sean. As always, great to chat.
Likewise. Thanks, y'all.